The drive was longer than I remembered. Each mile marker blurred past, a countdown to warmth, to the familiar chaos of family. Thanksgiving. The word itself tasted of roasted turkey and cranberry sauce, of laughter echoing through the old house. I could almost hear the clatter of silverware against china, my wife's voice weaving through the happy noise, a bright thread in the tapestry of the day. I pictured the scene in my mind's eye, stepping through the front door, the scent of a dozen different dishes hitting me at once, a comforting, overwhelming wave. Aunts and uncles would be clustered in the living room, their voices a cheerful rumble, catching up on the year's events. Cousins would be scattered around, some playing video games, others sprawled on the floor, deep in conversation. And then there was Sarah, my Sarah. I imagined her smile, the way her eyes crinkled at the corners, a silent promise of a shared joke, a stolen moment amidst the festive whirlwind. The highway stretched out before me, an endless ribbon promising connection. I fiddled with the radio, the music a poor substitute for the symphony of voices I was about to rejoin. My phone buzzed with a text from her. "Almost there, honey, can't wait." A surge of anticipation, a warmth spreading through my chest. This was going to be perfect. The year had been a whirlwind of work and distance, and this Thanksgiving was a chance to press pause, to remember what mattered. I turned onto Elm Street, the familiar houses lining the road like old friends. There it was, the two-story Victorian, its porch lights glowing like welcoming beacons. I pulled into the driveway, the crunch of gravel under the tires a satisfying sound. I cut the engine, the sudden silence amplifying the thrumming of my own excitement. But then the silence lingered. It wasn't the comfortable quiet of a sleeping house. It was something else, a hollow stillness that felt wrong, unsettling. I grabbed my bag from the back seat, the weight of it grounding me, a tangible link to the reality I expected. The front door was unlocked, which was unusual. We always kept it locked, even when we were expecting company. A flicker of unease, a tiny seed of doubt, began to sprout in my mind. I pushed the door open, stepping into the foyer. The air inside was still, heavy, no aroma of roasting turkey, no cheerful chatter, no familiar faces, just silence. A silence that pressed against my ears, that seemed to amplify the beating of my own heart. "Hello?" I called out, my voice sounding strangely loud in the stillness. No response. I walked further into the house, my footsteps muffled by the thick carpet. The living room was empty, the furniture arranged neatly, almost too neatly, like a stage set waiting for actors who would never arrive. A knot of anxiety tightened in my stomach. Where was everyone? A quick trip to the store? An unexpected change of plans? I tried to push the thoughts aside, to cling to the hope of a simple explanation. But the silence persisted, a heavy blanket smothering any attempt at reassurance. Then I saw her. At the far end of the living room, in the old armchair, sat Grandma Eleanor, Sarah's grandmother. She was usually a whirlwind of energy, bustling around the kitchen, her voice a cheerful command. But now she was still, almost frozen, her gaze fixed on some distant point. Her face was pale, her expression unreadable. Something was definitely wrong. My heart quickened its pace. I moved towards her, the knot in my stomach twisting tighter with each step. This wasn't the welcome I had expected. This wasn't Thanksgiving. "Grandma?" My voice cracked, the word barely a whisper in the echoing stillness of the room. She blinked, her eyes focusing on me slowly, as if she were emerging from a deep sleep. "Jonas," she said, her voice a low, raspy sound, not her usual bright, commanding tone. "You're here?" "Where is everyone?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, to mask the growing unease that was tightening its grip. "Sarah? The others?" She shifted slightly in the armchair, her gaze drifting away from me again, towards the unlit fireplace. They went ahead," she said, to the show?" "The show?" I frowned, confused. "What show? I didn't know about any show, and why didn't Sarah tell me?" Grandma Eleanor's hand fluttered to her throat, a nervous gesture I'd never seen before. "It was a last-minute thing," she mumbled. "A surprise for her friend." "A friend?" My confusion deepened. "What friend? And why would they all go without me?" I thought we were all having Thanksgiving dinner here. She didn't answer immediately. A long, uncomfortable silence stretched between us, broken only by the faint ticking of a grandfather clock in the hallway. When she finally spoke, her voice was even lower, almost a mumble. Camden, she said. The name hit me like a physical blow. Camden, Sarah's ex, the one she always said was just a friend, the one I'd never quite trusted. A coldness spread through me, a premonition of something terrible. Camden, I repeated, my voice barely audible. They went to a show with Camden? Grandma Eleanor nodded slowly, her eyes avoiding mine. It was important to her, she said. She said she needed to catch up. I stared at her, trying to process the words, the implications. It didn't make sense. None of it made sense. Why would Sarah leave on Thanksgiving without me, to go to a show with her ex-boyfriend? And why was Grandma Eleanor acting so strangely, so evasive? Did she say when they'd be back? I asked, my voice trembling slightly. Soon, Grandma Eleanor replied, but the word hung in the air, hollow and unconvincing. She didn't sound sure. She didn't look sure. I pulled out my phone, my fingers shaking slightly as I scrolled through my contacts. Sarah's number. I pressed the call button, holding the phone to my ear, listening to the endless ringing. No answer. I tried again, and again. Still nothing. A growing panic began to claw at my throat. I tried her mother, her sister, my own parents. No one picked up. It was as if they had all vanished, disappeared into thin air. The festive cheer I had felt just an hour ago had been replaced by a gnawing fear, a chilling sense of isolation. Where could they be? I whispered, more to myself than to Grandma Eleanor. She didn't answer. She just sat there, her gaze fixed on the fireplace, her expression still unreadable. But I could feel it, the unspoken tension in the room, the weight of a secret she wasn't sharing. I knew, with a growing certainty, that this wasn't just about a missed Thanksgiving dinner. Something was very, very wrong. The silence in the living room was becoming unbearable, a heavy blanket of unspoken words. Grandma Eleanor remained in the armchair, seemingly lost in her own thoughts, offering no further explanation. I couldn't just stand there paralyzed by confusion and a growing sense of dread. I had to do something. I had to find out what was going on. My eyes scanned the room, searching for anything at all that might offer a clue. The mantelpiece, with its collection of family photos, seemed to mock me with images of happier times. Sarah and I smiling, carefree, at our wedding. Sarah with her parents, all beaming with pride. Each picture a reminder of the life I thought I knew, the life that now felt like a fragile illusion. I moved towards the hallway, my footsteps hesitant, as if I were afraid of what I might find. The hallway led to Sarah's study, a room she usually kept meticulously organized, a reflection of her own structured mind. But as I pushed the door open, I was met with a scene that was anything but organized. Books were pulled haphazardly from the shelves, papers were scattered across the desk, and a drawer was slightly ajar, revealing a jumble of files and folders. It looked like someone had been searching for something, and in a hurry. A coldness washed over me. This wasn't Sarah. Sarah would never leave her study in such a state. My gaze fell on a small, leather-bound journal lying open on the desk, half hidden beneath a pile of papers. It was Sarah's diary. I hesitated. I knew I shouldn't. It was private, intimate, but the gnawing anxiety inside me was stronger than my sense of propriety. I reached for it, my hand trembling slightly as I picked it up. The pages were filled with Sarah's familiar handwriting, but the words were anything but familiar. Entries about feeling trapped, about longing for something more, about a connection with someone that felt electric. The name C appeared frequently, followed by descriptions of secret meetings, shared laughter, and a sense of understanding that Sarah seemed to feel was missing from her life with me. My heart pounded in my chest, each word a hammer blow to my carefully constructed reality. I read about stolen moments, whispered phone calls, and a growing distance between Sarah and me. A distance I had been too blind to see, too trusting to acknowledge. One entry, dated just a few days before Thanksgiving, described a plan. a plan to catch up with C over the holiday, to have one last time before what? Before she made a decision? Before she ended things? The words swam before my eyes, blurring with the tears that were now welling up. I closed the journal, my hand shaking uncontrollably. The room seemed to spin, the walls closing in on me. I had been so wrong, so incredibly, devastatingly wrong. The perfect Thanksgiving, the loving wife, the happy home. It had all been a lie. A carefully constructed facade that was now crumbling before my very eyes. I stumbled out of the study, the weight of the betrayal pressing down on me, crushing me. I felt sick, nauseous, as if I had been punched in the gut. I leaned against the wall, trying to catch my breath, trying to make sense of the chaos that had erupted in my world. The silence of the house was no longer empty. It was filled with the echoes of lies, the whispers of infidelity, the shattering of everything I had believed to be true. The journal's words were a brand, searing themselves into my memory. Each phrase, each carefully chosen word, was a fresh wound. I couldn't stay in the hallway. The walls felt like they were closing in, suffocating me with the weight of Sarah's deception. I needed to move, to do something, anything to escape the suffocating grip of this newfound reality. I found myself back in the living room, drawn to my bag, as if it held some kind of anchor to the world I thought I knew. I rummaged through it, my hands shaking, searching for my laptop. I needed to see, I needed to confirm the truth, to find some tangible, undeniable proof that what I had read in the journal wasn't some twisted nightmare. I opened the laptop, the familiar glow of the screen, a stark contrast to the darkness that had enveloped my heart. I navigated to our shared calendar, the one we used to coordinate our lives, our schedules, our plans. Thanksgiving, marked with a simple, unassuming family dinner. No mention of a show, no hint of a last-minute change of plans. A wave of nausea washed over me. I felt like I was going to be sick. I clicked on the days leading up to Thanksgiving, searching for any clue, any indication that Sarah had been planning something, anything behind my back. And then I saw it. A series of entries carefully disguised as work meetings or appointments, but each one coinciding with the time and location mentioned in Sarah's journal. My breath hitched in my throat. It was there, in black and white, the evidence of her betrayal laid out before me. But it wasn't enough. I needed more. I needed to see it with my own eyes. I navigated to our bank account, my fingers trembling as I entered the password. I scrolled through the recent transactions, my heart pounding in my ears, and there it was, a charge for 2 tickets to a show. The same show mentioned in the journal, a show that was happening tonight, a show that Sarah was attending with Camden. The date, the time, the location, everything matched. I slammed the laptop shut, the sound echoing in the silent house. It was real, all of it. The journal, the calendar entries, the bank statement, it was all real. My wife was cheating on me. She had been lying to me, deceiving me for God knows how long. The pain was a physical ache, a searing fire that ripped through my chest. I felt like I had been ripped open, my insides exposed, vulnerable, raw. How could she do this to me? How could she betray me in such a way? The woman I loved, the woman I had built my life with, had shattered everything I thought we had. I sat there slumped on the couch, the laptop lying closed beside me, the weight of its contents crushing me. I tried to make sense of it, to understand why, but there were no answers, only a gaping void where my trust and my love had once been. The silence of the house was no longer empty. It was filled with the screams of my broken heart. The laptop lay on the couch, a silent testament to Sarah's deception. I couldn't bring myself to look at it again. The image of those transactions burned into my mind. My thoughts were a whirlwind of confusion, anger, and a deep, aching sadness. How long had this been going on? Had our entire marriage been a lie? I became aware of a presence, a quiet stillness in the room. Grandma Eleanor. She hadn't moved from her armchair, but her gaze was now fixed on me, her expression different. Not the vacant, distant look from before, but something sharper, more knowing. It was as if she had been waiting for me to reach this point, to uncover the truth. I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time since my arrival. Her eyes, though aged, held a clarity, an awareness that surprised me. It was unsettling, this sudden shift in her demeanor. Was it possible she knew? Had she seen something, suspected something? "Grandma," I said, my voice hoarse, barely a whisper. Did you know?" She didn't answer directly. Instead, she slowly shook her head, a small, almost imperceptible movement. "I knew she wasn't herself," she said, her voice low and steady. "She's been restless, distracted." "Distracted," I scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. "Distracted is an understatement. She's been having an affair." Grandma Eleanor didn't flinch. She simply watched me, her gaze unwavering. "She's always been drawn to excitement," she said, "to the thrill of the chase." Her words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken implications. Was she trying to excuse Sarah's behavior, or was she offering a different perspective, a glimpse into a side of my wife I had never truly seen? "And you just let it happen?" I asked, my voice rising with a mixture of anger and disbelief. "You knew she was going out with him tonight and you didn't say anything?" Grandma Eleanor sighed, a long, weary sound. "I tried," she said, "in my own way. I told her she was hurting someone, but she wouldn't listen." "Hurting someone?" I repeated, the words echoing in my mind. Was that all I was to Sarah? Someone? Not her husband, her partner, the man she had vowed to spend her life with? A strange thought occurred to me. Why had Sarah left her grandmother here alone on Thanksgiving? It didn't make sense. Sarah, for all her flaws, was usually attentive to her grandmother's needs. Unless she knew that Grandma Eleanor knew, unless she was trying to keep us apart, to prevent this very conversation. "She left you here," I said, the realization dawning on me. "She left you here knowing I would come, knowing that you would have to explain." Grandma Eleanor nodded slowly, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and something else, something that looked almost like pity. She thought you needed to learn," she said, "to see her for who she truly is." Her words were like a key, unlocking a door I had been too afraid to open. I had always seen Sarah through rose-colored glasses, blind to her flaws, willing to forgive anything in the name of love. But now the glasses were shattered, and the truth was staring me in the face. And it was a truth that was both painful and liberating. The weight of Grandma Eleanor's words settled upon me, a heavy cloak of understanding. Sarah hadn't just gone to a show with her ex, she had orchestrated a carefully constructed scenario, leaving me to stumble upon the truth in the most painful way possible. The betrayal wasn't a single act. It was a pattern of deception, a web of lies that had been woven around me, and I had been too blind to see it. The front door opened, the sound jarring in the tense silence. Footsteps, light and hurried, then a deeper, more confident stride echoed through the hallway. My heart clenched. They were back. Sarah and Camden. The reality of the situation, the physical presence of them together, sent a wave of nausea through me. Sarah appeared in the doorway, her face flushed, her eyes bright with a mixture of excitement and guilt. She stopped short when she saw me, her smile faltering. "Jonas," she said, her voice a strained whisper. "You're here." "Yes, Sarah, I'm here," I replied, my voice low and steady, trying to control the storm of emotions raging within me. "And so are you." Camden stepped into view behind her, his arm casually draped around her waist. He looked at me with a smirk, a smugness that made my blood boil. "Well, well," he said, his voice dripping with false cheerfulness. "Look who decided to join the party." I ignored him, my gaze fixed on Sarah. "Where were you?" I asked, the question hanging in the air, heavy with accusation. Sarah's eyes darted between me and Grandma Eleanor, a flicker of panic in their depths. We went to see a show," she stammered, her voice trembling slightly. "A friend got us tickets at the last minute." "A friend," I repeated, the word laced with sarcasm. "Is that what you're calling him now, Sarah?" "A friend?" She flinched, her face paling. "Jonas, what's wrong with you? Why are you acting like this? Why am I acting like this? I laughed, the sound bitter and hollow. Maybe it has something to do with the fact that my wife is out on Thanksgiving night with her ex-boyfriend, lying to my face about where she's been. The color drained from her face completely. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Camden's smirk faded, replaced by a look of unease. He stepped away from Sarah, his hand dropping to his side. I know about the show, Sarah, I continued, my voice gaining strength. I know about the hotel. I know about the messages. I know everything. I could see the realization dawning on her face, the understanding that her carefully constructed lies had crumbled, that her secret was out in the open. She looked at me, her eyes pleading, but it was too late. The trust was gone, shattered beyond repair. This is insane, she whispered, her voice cracking. You're taking her side? She gestured towards Grandma Eleanor, who sat silently in her armchair, watching the scene unfold with a quiet intensity. There are no sides, Sarah, I said, my voice firm. There's only the truth. And the truth is, you betrayed me. You lied to me. You broke my heart. The air in the room hung thick with unspoken accusations and the raw edges of exposed deceit. Sarah's attempts at denial had crumbled, leaving behind a fragile silence that threatened to shatter with the slightest sound. I stood there, the weight of her betrayal pressing down on me, each breath a painful reminder of the life I thought we had. Camden shifted uncomfortably, his bravado replaced by a nervous energy. He glanced at Sarah, then back at me, his eyes darting around the room as if searching for an escape route. I couldn't focus on him. My gaze was locked on Sarah, on the woman I had loved, the woman who now stood before me as a stranger. I don't understand, I finally managed to say, the words catching in my throat. Why? Why would you do this? What did I do to deserve this? Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but they didn't move me. Not anymore. I had seen those tears before, used as a weapon, a manipulation, a way to deflect blame and avoid responsibility. It's not about you, she said, her voice barely a whisper. It's about me. I needed something. Something? I scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. You needed to cheat on your husband? You needed to lie to me for months? You needed to destroy our marriage? She winced at my words, but her gaze remained defiant. I felt trapped, she said, suffocated. You were always so safe, so predictable. Her words were like a knife twisting in an open wound. Safe? Predictable? Was that how she saw me? The man who had loved her unconditionally, who had built a life with her, was safe and predictable? And he wasn't, I asked, gesturing towards Camden with a dismissive wave of my hand. He was the exciting one? The one who made you feel alive? Sarah didn't answer. She couldn't. The truth hung in the air between us, ugly and undeniable. She had sought excitement, a thrill, at the expense of my heart, my trust, my happiness. I looked at Grandma Eleanor, who had remained silent throughout the confrontation, her presence a steady anchor in the storm. Her eyes, though filled with sadness, also held a strange sense of calm, a quiet understanding that transcended the chaos of the moment. How long, I asked, turning back to Sarah. How long has this been going on? She hesitated, her gaze shifting away from mine. A few months, she mumbled. A few months, I repeated, my voice rising with disbelief. A few months, and you expected me to just... What? To just accept it? To pretend that everything was fine? She finally looked at me, her eyes filled with a desperate plea. I was going to tell you, she said. I was going to end it. I just needed more time. More time? I laughed, the sound hollow and devoid of any humor. More time to decide if you wanted to stay married to me? More time to enjoy your little affair before you broke my heart? The reality of the situation crashed down on me, the full weight of her betrayal crushing me. The woman I loved had been living a double life, and I had been completely oblivious, a fool blinded by my own love and trust. The confrontation hung in the balance, a raw and painful exposure of everything that had been hidden beneath the surface of my marriage. Sarah's justifications, her desperate attempts to explain away her actions, fell flat, echoing in the hollow space between us. I stood there, the weight of her betrayal a crushing burden, The future I had envisioned with her now a shattered landscape. My mind raced, a chaotic storm of conflicting emotions. Anger, a burning rage that threatened to consume me. Hurt, a deep, aching pain that tore at my heart. Confusion, a desperate need to understand the why behind her actions. And beneath it all, a growing sense of resignation, a weary acceptance that the life I knew was irrevocably changed. I looked at Sarah, really looked at her, and for the first time, I saw her not as the woman I loved, but as a stranger, someone I didn't recognize, someone whose actions were incomprehensible to me. The woman standing before me was not the woman I had married, the woman I had built my life with. That woman was gone, replaced by someone selfish, deceitful, and capable of inflicting unimaginable pain. Camden shifted again, his unease palpable. He opened his mouth to speak, to offer some hollow apology or justification, but I cut him off with a sharp, dismissive gesture. "This isn't about you," I said, my voice cold and hard. "This is between my wife and me." He fell silent, his eyes narrowing, a flicker of resentment flashing across his face. But I didn't care. I couldn't waste my energy on him. My focus was on Sarah, on the woman who held the power to destroy everything I held dear. The silence stretched between us, thick with unspoken accusations and the heavy burden of the decisions that now lay before me, decisions that would determine the course of my future, the shape of my life. I thought about the years we had spent together, the memories we had created, the life we had built. It all felt like a fragile illusion now, tainted by the knowledge of her betrayal. Could I ever forgive her? Could I ever trust her again? The questions echoed in my mind, offering no easy answers. Grandma Eleanor, who had remained a silent observer throughout the confrontation, finally spoke. Her voice, though low, was firm and steady, a voice of quiet strength and unwavering wisdom. "You have a choice to make, Jonas," she said. "A difficult choice, but a necessary one." Her words resonated with me, cutting through the fog of my confusion and pain. She was right. I did have a choice. I could choose to forgive, to try to salvage what was left of my marriage, to cling to the hope that things could somehow be repaired. Or I could choose to walk away, to protect myself from further hurt, to start anew, to build a life free from deception and betrayal. The weight of those choices pressed down on me, heavy and suffocating. Both paths were fraught with pain and uncertainty, but one offered the possibility of healing and a future free from the shadow of Sarah's infidelity. The weight of the decision pressed down on me, an almost physical burden. Forgiveness. The word hung in the air, a shimmering, fragile possibility. Could I truly forgive Sarah? Could I erase the images seared into my mind, the words etched into my heart? Could I rebuild the shattered trust, piece by painful piece, and pretend that the foundation of our marriage wasn't irrevocably cracked? The thought of reconciliation offered a twisted kind of comfort, a return to the familiar, a desperate clinging to the life I had known. But it also felt like a betrayal of myself, a surrender to the pain she had inflicted. It would mean accepting her lies, minimizing her betrayal, and living with the constant fear that it could happen again. The alternative was a stark and terrifying unknown, walking away, starting over. The thought sent a shiver down my spine, a cold gust of loneliness and uncertainty. It meant leaving behind the life we had built, the future we had planned, the woman I had loved. It meant facing the world alone with a broken heart and a shattered sense of self. But within that fear, a flicker of something else began to glow. A spark of hope, a glimmer of possibility, the chance to heal, to rebuild, to find a love that was honest and true, the chance to reclaim my life, my happiness, my identity. I looked at Sarah, her face etched with a mixture of fear and a desperate last-ditch attempt at remorse. But her tears no longer moved me. Her words no longer held any weight. The woman I saw before me was a stranger, a beautiful stranger who had shattered my world. "It's over, Sarah," I said, the words heavy but firm, a finality that echoed in the silent room. "I can't do this anymore. I can't live with this, with you, knowing what you've done." Her face crumpled, a sob escaping her lips. But I didn't waver. The decision, once a distant, terrifying prospect, had solidified within me, a hard, unyielding core of self-preservation. "You're making a mistake," she pleaded, her voice choked with tears. "Please, Jonas, don't do this. We can fix this. We can—" "There's nothing to fix, Sarah," I said, my voice flat and devoid of emotion. "You broke it, you broke us, and I can't put it back together." Camden stepped forward, his expression a mixture of surprise and anger. "You can't just walk away," he said, his voice laced with a possessiveness that made my stomach churn. "You can't just—" I turned to him, my gaze unwavering. "Stay out of this," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "This has nothing to do with you." He hesitated, a flicker of fear in his eyes. He knew in that moment that the game was over. He had lost, and so had I, but in a different way. I had lost a wife, a marriage, a future, but I had gained something far more valuable: my self-respect, my dignity, my freedom. The immediate aftermath was a blur of movement and strained silence. Sarah's desperate pleas, Camden's sullen retreat, the heavy weight of unspoken words hanging in the air. But through it all, I held on to that core of self-preservation, that newfound strength that allowed me to take the first steps towards a new, unknown future. The door clicked shut behind them, the sound echoing through the house, a finality that resonated deep within my bones. Sarah and Camden were gone, just like that. The Thanksgiving I had anticipated, the warm embrace of family, the comforting rituals of tradition, had dissolved into a bitter confrontation, a shattered illusion, a life irrevocably altered. I stood there for a long moment, the silence no longer heavy with unspoken lies, but with a strange, hollow emptiness. The house felt different now, stripped bare of the pretense that had masked the truth for so long. It was no longer a home, a place of shared love and laughter, but a stark reminder of betrayal and loss. Grandma Eleanor remained in her armchair, her presence a quiet strength in the aftermath of the storm. She didn't speak, didn't offer any words of comfort or condolence. She simply watched me, her gaze steady and unwavering, a silent acknowledgement of the pain I was enduring, the journey I was about to begin. I looked around the living room, my eyes lingering on the remnants of a life that was no longer mine. The family photos on the mantelpiece, once cherished reminders of happy times, now seemed like relics of a distant past. The furniture arranged with such care now felt cold and impersonal. The very air in the room carried the faint scent of lies, a lingering reminder of the